and the one below our feet and the Maharak shield, and the one at the Iumbi upward at the same time. So you're just going to bring the spheres together at the Azure and merge them with the Azure sphere. So just take one large inhale and pull in. And use the pull in to pull the spheres together. And now we're going to use the exhale to push them all out together from the Azure. Right. The next stage in this is going to be we're each going to make, each one who wants to, make a personal connection with the Eartha shield, with the Eartha planetary shield. And it will be done personally, and it will be done through the part of yourself that's in bilocation there already. How that got there, I have no idea, by the way. Yeah, but they're there. So there is a part of you that's waiting for this activation right now in some less dense form of matter, in the Eartha core, waiting to receive this connection with you. And it's through that part of yourself you will be able to connect directly to the Eartha shield. And this is a homecoming to the planet, not just the planet Earth as we've known it since the fall of Tyra 550 million years ago. This was the true full Eartha, the original Eartha, before any of those dramas ever took place. So we're going to connect with the very, very, very pre-ancient Eartha. And there's a consciousness, a planetary consciousness that goes with this that is a bit different, quite a bit different than you feel when you connect with Earth itself, with the Earth shield. When you connect with the Eartha shield, there's this huge feeling of love and tolerance and just awareness. So we're going to try to look for those feelings when we make this connection. We're going to simply use the breath to create a replica of the large set of 5 Sati spheres, which is now really one large Sati Seda sphere with 5 interior levels to it. So it's one large one with 5 fields within it. Each of them have their window, their little tube to the future and to the past. So we're going to simply take a breath into the Azure and intend that a replica, you're not going to move the one that's actually there, you're going to make a replica of the large field Sati sphere around you. It's going to go all the way down. Breathe it down to Earth core, then down further, one notch, to the Eartha shield. And hold the lungs empty at the bottom of the exhale for a moment. And imagine now that replica of your large Sati sphere is now down in the Earth core. And the part of yourself that is already there, imagine that it's walking toward it now in its own bubble, in its own sphere, and it's going to step inside the replica sphere that you created. You can breathe now, just gently. Try to get a sense or an inner image, and you don't have to use your viewing screen. It can be anywhere in your head or outside your head that you want. But try to see what's happening down in the Earth's core. Try to see the sphere that's a replica of the large one that you are within at this point, up here. Try to see it down in the Eartha core, and that there is a version of you. It's a you that looks like you here, but you have different clothes on. Because there we seem to be all wearing they're very, very simple, plain white gown type things, but I wouldn't say they're white, but they're not white. They're heliotalic. They're light. They're garments of light. Yeah, and they're really beautiful. They sparkle. Sometimes they look white, and sometimes they look like, rainbow colors shimmering through them, kind of like the holographic papers and stuff you can see here, but much finer and lighter. So that self has those robes on. All of them have the same ones on. Has to do with a frequency you need to hold in order to enter that space. That's what the robes, they symbolize that. Try to sense the feeling of that robe, that the self of you, that looks just like you but has that robe on, down there. Try to feel, just get a sense on your physical body of what that robe might feel like. Try to put yourself in that little you down there. Try to feel, does it have seams on the shoulders? Can you feel seams? Am I cold in it? Am I warm in it? What does it feel like against my skin? See if you can pick up just a little bit of sensation of that. Because as you do that, you're bringing a bit of those frequencies into the physical body here as well. How good we do get one. They're going to send us up a replica. We're going to breathe up a replica robe, which again is a shroud of frequencies that are needed to access these very sacred core spaces of the Earth, the planetary shield. So inhale and then exhale gently down to the image of yourself in Eartha core. And as you next inhale, you're going to inhale up to the Azure, and you're going to have a little package with you. It's a little package of a spark, heliotalic spark. You inhale it up to the Azure, and then exhale it outward into the large sphere, and notice that suddenly the little package opens up, and it is a lovely garment of light, of heliotalic light. We now have matching garments of light, and they are laying within our etheric body structure, just against the skin. Try to sense the sensation. I'm getting a bit of coolness from it, cool fabric, which is great for me. I prefer woolies myself, but I'm always cold. But these, I think they'll feel a bit different to everybody. Some people might feel woolies. They just said some people might feel really thin, fine ones. It doesn't matter. They're all effective, and they're all being catered to the particular needs of your own body pattern. Okay, now we are going to do two things. The first is we're going to create another replica image of our Sadi sphere, large Sadi sphere, and we are going to imagine that there is a large disc up in the ceiling of the room, and in the center of the disc is a collection area that's going to collect these replica spheres of energy that hold a set of the keys that belong to the Eartha shield. Now, the indigo shield isn't up over our heads right now. It's down below our feet. Its main plane is down below our feet. It is, however, a dome shield. All of the shields actually are spheres. So when we talk about the shields, we're dealing with the plane that runs in the center of them. What the beloveds have created is a collection area that will be easier for everybody to aim at without basically energetically going through each other in order to, project the replica out. So they're going to collect the replicas up in this area in the ceiling, and then we are going to breathe it down into the indigo shield once they're all collected and harmonized. And then we're all going to go on a journey, and we're going to go with our Sadi spheres down and open our Rashalay eyes and go down into merger with the part of ourselves that is down in the Eartha core, and we're going to ride the shield down, bring it down, so it can merge with the Earth core and that part of ourselves. All right. This is interesting. This is going right into the second technique. I mean, this part, I can feel it. This goes with the other technique that we're going to run later, which means we're getting tachyon initiation when we do this. When we get to the point where we drop the shield, when we bring it down, there's going to be something else that happens that instead of breaking in between and having to go back down, they're just going to have us go right in. That's going to initiate the tachyon cycle within ourselves and within the indigo shield once we're done doing the earth thing. Alrighty. Now, just breathe gently again for a few minutes. And kind of do a clearing breath where you just kind of, yeah. Okay, now we're going to inhale upward a pale silver pink spark from the Eartha shield core into our Azure. We're going to hold it at the Azure for a moment and intend it to collect the imprint of our Sadi Seda sphere and the appropriate portions of it that go with the Eartha shield that we are supposed to transfer the keys to. We're going to exhale now and point the exhale toward the center collection point in the ceiling as a little spark. We're going to exhale it now. A little pink spark goes out. Then we're going to take one more inhale up from the Eartha shield, pale pink silver, and send it out following that first little spark. And notice when the two sparks collide with each other in the center of the shield in the ceiling, that a replica of your sphere, your Sadi sphere, pops out in the center of the shield in the ceiling. So what we have now is, it kind of looks like a nest of eggs upside down with all these wonderful balls. Some of them are huge. Some of them are out in the lobby. Right. There's a couple of people who just couldn't resist. I know I can. Right. Okay. I wonder if it's a guy thing. I don't think so. There's at least 3 that are girls, so it's not. All right. You can just breathe gently. And what we're next going to do is, leaving our replica Sadi sphere in its little nest in the shield in the ceiling, we're going to first activate our pillar of something or other. What is the name of this pillar? It runs through the Maharic pillar, but it's more than that. It's, let me see if they give me a name on it. Is that what it's called? I didn't think so. That's why I didn't use that. I said, you could call it a Sadi pillar. I said, is that what it's called? No. What is it? They said, hold on a second. We'll find a translation. Yes, it is heliotalic. We know that. All right, that works. They said, let's just call it, for now, your ascension chamber. You can move up and down in it like an elevator shaft. You could also call it your breathing tube, but it does much more than breathe. That's what they're saying. All right, now, we are going to activate the ascension pillar. It has a special name, by the way, in Anahazi. They're not giving it to me now, but I'm seeing the part of the letters go by. Now, getting heats already. Gosh. All right, what do we do to do this? All right. With the attention at the Azure, take an inhale breath upward, all the way up to chakra 14. And hold the breath up there at chakra 14, and notice that there is a quite large 1,728 petal living live lotus flower sitting on chakra 14. When we exhale, we're going to take that whole lotus flower with the exhale breath and run it all the way down to the Mahadra in our own personal connection to Eartha. We are now going to inhale it upward to the pineal. And exhale outward. I'm going to inhale and exhale the lotus flower down to the Iyumbi. Inhale and draw the lotus flower up to the Azure. hold the breath right there at the inhale, and then forcefully we're going to push the lotus flower down to right below the feet in the Maharak shield. Now we're going to do a series of 3 rapid inhale-exhale breaths. Every exhale will expand energy outward into the center of this lotus flower under our feet on the Maharak shield. So inhale up from Eartha core, and then down into the lotus flower. 1. Another one. Up. 2. Another one. 3. Now breathe easy and relax, and try to sense what the lotus flower is doing. Its petals are opening. The outer petals are coming out more and actually coming down, almost like a waterfall effect, kind of like iris-shaped. And each level of them are opening up. There are how many levels? 140 levels, 444 levels. There are 12 levels of 144 petals. And they're all opening up. And as they open up, there's something at the core there's like heliotalic energies, a ball running at the core of it, and it's actually expanding the lotus flower out, so it's actually as large as the diameter in your Maharak shield, as the diameter of the sphere that you'd created. Now we're going to take one more breath and bring the enlarged, open lotus flower up to chakra 14. Exhale down to the Eartha core and the Mahadra. And then one more inhale and up to chakra 14 and leave it there. And then exhale and gently disengage from the lotus flower, leaving it back up there. Now you might notice that there's a swirling sensation of really pretty pale gold and silver currents that are like crossing through each other, running up the diameter of, however large your sphere diameter was. But they're like crossing through each other, spiraling up. Some are going clockwise, some are going counterclockwise. And it's like almost seeing a pillar of glass with silver and gold energy running up and down it. We can still see a lot of the clearness of it. It's not like completely saturated in silver and gold. So we all have these happening, and they're beginning to pull color, to pull heliotalic color up. Oh, neat. The heliotalic color is moving inward toward the rounds of the lotus petals, and it's forming different bands of color. And the band around the outside is the gold and silver pillar. He said eventually we will learn how to pull our shields together and to bring the pillar together into a ball of light where you can disappear, and then to open back up again, which opens your body back up, so wherever you end up, but that's later. For now, the pillar is going to allow us to connect with ourselves down in the earth core. Eartha core, sorry. All right, now what are we doing next? Okay. And just leave it for a second. Just breathe gently, because the pillar's gaining strength. It's gaining its strength. Keep seeing that flower in my eyes. Neat. It's pretty. Okay. Now, we're going to turn our attention for a moment to the nesting disc in the center of the ceiling in here. And we are going to bring that disc down into the indigo shield below our feet. We're going to bring it down. It's going to almost slide down on all of our pillars, as if they are the stabilizing rods that it will slide down gently on. And all we have to do to do this is simply take gentle inhale, exhale breaths, and inhale up and connect with the shield, and then exhale down, and it'll move it down a little bit. We don't have to do it all at the same rate either, so don't worry about synchronizing the breaths. The shield will do that. Okay, it's starting to. It's lowering now. It's about shoulder height on the group. See if you can feel it passing through you when it moves down, because it's about shoulder height now. Now it's moving down. It's about waist height. There we go. It's passing out beneath the feet now, and going down into the indigo shield. All right, now. You just breathe gently, and something really neat is happening in the center of the indigo shield. That's really pretty, and I hope some of you can see this, if not all of you. The shields have merged, and all of the large, different sized Sadi sphere replicas are now sitting in the core, the center area, except the center area is it's huge at this point because some of the spheres are really big. Within the center of the cluster of those Sadi sphere replicas, in the center, right at the center of the indigo shield, which is now also the center of the cluster shield that we brought down, there is a huge lotus flower, and it's one of those with 12 rounds of 144 petals. It's the 1728 petal Eartha shield one that the indigo shield is bringing down in to merge with the Eartha shield. And it's really, someday I've got to paint pictures of these someday. They're just so gorgeous. They're really pretty. Can anybody see it? Anybody? Nobody wants to say. Okay. Anyway, it's there. What we're going to do next is we're going to travel down, and this is coming to the end, where we're going to get we weren't going to do the pillars, they said before. We didn't have to do the pillar part to do the Eartha part. The pillar part is part of the tachyon technique, but they blended them together to make it more powerful. So what we're going to do, we're coming to the last phase of this. What we're going to do is we're going to merge ourselves in our Sadi spheres that are with us with our selves that are stationed down in Eartha core. And as we do this, it's going to draw the group shield, the indigo shield, with the Sadi spheres and the keys and the large lotus flower in its center down into the center of the Eartha shield. Once we all get down there with the shield, then we're going to do something. They'll let us know when we get there. And then we are going to get a gift from the Eartha shield, they're saying. It's a tachyon burst that will create a rapid initiation of the tachyon cycle. And then we'll be able to come back and have accomplished what we set out to do technique-wise this evening. So what we're going to do is just, let's see, how do they want to do this? Be aware of your what do they call it? Your tube, your ascension chamber. Your ascension chamber. We're going to ride our large Sadi sphere down inside it, because the ascension chamber should be as wide as the Sadi sphere that you made. So it's going to slide like a ball down inside of a tube, and you're going to imagine that yourself is going with it. And try to take as much of yourself as you can. If you can't take your body right now, take as much of your consciousness as you can in this merger. Remember, you have the heliotalic garment of light that is in your etheric body now that will allow you passage into these domains. And imagine as you breathe yourself down, and I believe it's going to be one whoosh of an exhale breath that takes us down, the shield is going to come. You don't even have to worry about thinking about the shield and the big lotus coming down, because that will come down on its own as the group goes down. But they would like us to try to synchronize this one whoosh exhale breath, so we can all go down together, down into the down through the ascension tubes together, and come out in the earth, and merged with our replicas, in our replica selves in the earth core. All right. So if we inhale now up to the pineal. Hold there to build charge. And when I count to 3, everyone will exhale together and put themselves down into the earth core through the ascension chamber. 1, 2, 3. Now just relax comfortably and let your ascension pillar do its thing, and put your consciousness down there. See if you can perceive, feeling yourself with your other, merged with your other part of yourself that's down there. Try to feel the heliotalic garment. Try to sense this lovely space. It's as if we're inside of this not too large cave. It's a bit bigger than this room, but it's a lovely atmosphere. And there's both pale pink and pale blue light running through it, but it's kind of like a nighttime light. Try to see if you can sense the other people that are. They happen to be standing down there where we are sitting. They are actually standing. Try to sense the other people in their heliotalic garments there. Try to sense the parts of them from here that are trying to come in. Imagine you're the self down there now, sensing this self trying to come in to focus with him. And you're trying to help that self, pull that self down into the body. Come on, you can come down. You know, it's easy to be down here. It's lovely down here. Imagine that you are looking toward a center area that the group is actually standing around. And in that center area, there is a set of 3 rather large balls of metallic energy. The largeness is, let me try to compare it to something. It's about the size of the diameter of the light shades that are in this room here. So they're just large metal balls. One is pale gold, one is pale silver, and one is the pale blue celestaline metallic sphere. These are in the center of the partiki within the Taran light seed of the Eartha shield. We're looking at the core, the true core, the core of the being of Eartha. And it's a very loving and vulnerable space. It's a precious space to be in, to be entrusted to come there. It's like letting someone into the core of not only your soul, but your very existence. We're being trusted by Eartha to actually be here. It's a lovely feeling. Try to feel the consciousness of the Eartha shield. There are times when you can take yourself, using your ascension pillar, to actually travel down in and go back to this place. You've been invited, and you can go again. As long as that privilege isn't abused, you will be welcome there. But there's a lovely healing nature to the consciousness of Eartha that is down there. Try to sense this feeling while you're there. Meanwhile, the shield, the indigo shield, has lowered itself down and has centered itself on the center area of the 3 partiki center balls in the in the eartha shield. Right now, the large lotus flower that was in the indigo shield is moving down into the set of 3 metal-like balls in the eartha shield. Oh, neat. And each of the petals are turning to flames, to lovely standing wave flames. Where they're not like meaty flower petal texture anymore. They're beautiful gaseous flames of various colors. And they're spiraling, some clockwise, some counterclockwise, into the 3 metal balls. Okay, it's time to vacate the chamber before we get blasted with tachyons, probably. All right, what they're going to have us do now is, while there's an interaction taking place right now between the keys that we sent down, the 1728 keys in the lotus, and the 3 metallic balls in the core of the particae of the taran of the eartha shield. All right, they are going to pop, and when that pop happens, there's going to be a celestialine wave burst of tachyons that releases, and we're going to come up here to catch that, because you don't want to be in the core when that happens. That's what they're saying. So we're going to bring ourselves up now with we can breathe for a minute. We're going to do a simultaneous inhale and bring ourselves up together. Okay. On the count of 3, we'll inhale upward from there, back up to here to the Azare, and put ourselves back in our seats. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, oops. Okay. All right. And we're just going to relax for a moment, and there is going to be a rush of energy that is a celestialine wave that comes up from the earth core within the next, how many? Okay. Within the next, they said it's going to be within the next 5 to 10 minutes. It will come up. We don't have to do anything to receive it. But if we don't want to receive it for any reason, because it's always free will, you can just say, no, and your fields won't receive it. So we get to basically relax now, and if we have to, take a comfort run, not for break, but just for a run, because then we're just going to go into workshop, and it is very late. But we are going to get a burst. I'll let you know. They'll probably give me a heads up when it's getting ready to come, so we can stop and kind of like just focus on it and help breathe it in. But it is, they're calling it a tachyon burst from the earth, eartha, that will begin the process of tachyon initiation in our bodies and in our shields. And that will put us right on schedule as far as technique activations go, and then just have to catch up with some diagrams before we leave tonight. All right. So let's take a 5-minute comfort break. And they said 10 to 15 minutes we're going to be, if we're back here talking, that's all right. I'll just stop and say, hey, it's incoming, that kind of thing, or upcoming. But we can take a run now, and we don't have to worry about it happening while we're in the loo or whatever. So we'll be back in a couple minutes. Hello again. We're just getting the overhead projector sorted. Oh, hello, and there was light. Oh. Now, they haven't said the burst is being released yet, but we did do back-to-back the 2 techniques, 3A and 3B. So we're just due for the tachyon celestialine burst. Whenever that comes, they'll let us know. And meanwhile, I've been trying to get through these graphs for 2 nights. They're just basically to round up some of the things I've been talking about, particularly because there are some new people here, and bless you, because if you haven't followed this stuff, you probably think what are these people talking about? So I'm not going to go through. If anybody is new and they haven't seen much, except maybe like a Thar one or something like that, we do recommend, we're getting it ready, the Tenerife workshop was very good for giving you a quick roundup of how pieces fit together, including the most recent information about what's taking place in the drama and that kind of stuff. So we do suggest for newcomer people that want to be able to catch up with what we're talking about in workshops like this, that the Tenerife workshop package is one of the best for that, because somehow it came together during that one where I was able to like jump through a lot of the different levels of what we've taught to show where they fit together and to bring us up to what that means now. And this is the next stage after what we taught in Tenerife. Now in Tenerife we were in a position where certain things were happening within drama, but we were not dealing with threshold activation yet. So one of the things I do want to convey, and I think I can do it in a pretty expedient form tonight, because we have the activation tomorrow and it's already late, and I don't want to have everybody up until like 11 tomorrow morning, and then we have an activation at 12 because you're going to be really, really tired by then, and I'm going to be unconscious on my feet, seriously. So I will try to get through these just quickly enough to, there's some graphs that will refresh the memory enough to show the link of information that will bring us to where you can understand what the threshold thing is about. So we understand a bit more about what it is, first of all, that we've been doing here with our keys and all of those things. It's one thing to hear the things, but it helps to see some of the graphs so we know, where pieces fit. As far as the techniques, like the one we just ran, that is, by the way, very powerful when done, especially. These techniques, we're going to have them, the long versions put on CDs, because these are techniques that will get you out of body into Rachalet when you have the space to do them. They're going to be best for working with small groups of people where they can lay down horizontally and comfortably, say on the floor, on a blanket and that kind of thing, and where you can like play the tape, and as a group or as individuals. This is when you'll be able to relax into your own consciousness enough where you're not sitting vertical, you're not in a group of 200 people, it's not like, 6 hours past your bedtime and you're really tired, that kind of stuff, where you can give yourself the environment that will support you with these. But these techniques, you've opened the doorways in the body at this point, the body and the consciousness, that will allow you to journey, and you can begin journeying with these tapes. That is how they trained me and my walkout partner before, that helped us through the walk-in, walk-out, and that literally got us out. What they'll do is when you take techniques, and there's going to be a set of what appear to be easy ones that you don't have to know where all sorts of parts are, that are going to be for the hosting people, the people that come in on hosts that aren't going to want to know any of this stuff, but they still, need to catch the frequencies. These are going to be amplifiers for anybody that's even working with the hard stuff. These techniques are meant to be used alone and with small groups where you can start to journey, and you will start to journey after using them for a while. Particularly when we get the simple journey tapes, where once you've got these activations and you actually have in your consciousness how these parts fit together, what you're actually doing, that makes it a much more powerful, trip. You have the doors open already, but you can and will get out of body with these, and you won't just get into an astral body. What you'll do is progressively be able to shift focus into your Rachalet body, and eventually the Rachalet body becomes a Rachalet vehicle that your physical body, if the DNA is capable of holding it, can step into and move with by turning into light and then outfolding again. So this is the beginning of the journeying, and I just wanted to know that if you don't get a lot of anything out of stuff when you're sitting in a group of 200 people, that's all right. There's a whole letdown reflex that fields do when they're in their own space, in their own time, in a comfortable environment. That's the state of mind that's best to enter these type of techniques with, because that's the state of mind that will be the launching pad, that you can actually go very, very deep with these, and they are meant to take you places, and they're meant to take you to good places in a safe way, where you don't have to worry about getting caught up in a Metatronic spiral and like dragged over the other way or anything like that. You don't have to worry about somebody hijacking your astral body or taking over your physical one while it's resting, that kind of stuff. So I just wanted you to know that these techniques and activations may seem mild when we're experiencing them in this format. But if we were, say, a group of 6 people doing these, and we already had the stuff just playing so we could all focus the consciousness in a relaxed, warm enough environment, we're not freezing to death now, and we could lay down. There's something that when you shift the Merkaba fields in the lay down position, because of the distortions in the planetary grids and the magnetic field, you actually are able to bring in frequencies, the Christic frequencies, much clearer and much faster. So sati, when we go into entering sati state, is best done horizontally. I do think this even applies for some reason that I don't understand yet, but I think it does, to places that don't have the grid distortions, because there are civilizations, Christian ones, that they actually have sati chambers in their homes, and they're usually underground in very nice environments, and they lay the body there, and they're like climate controlled in natural environments that helps the body have the frequencies it needs while they go out and journey. And sometimes they'll be gone for a year and come back, and the body's fine. It doesn't, because it's kept in the right energy framework, it doesn't have any problem. They don't need to be hooked up to wires or any of that stuff. So anyway, I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about the techniques and about the fact that these are the beginning of being able to journey and having the activations in your body that will allow you to do that. And if you haven't done it yet, don't say, oh, the techniques don't do anything, or maybe they work for some people, but they don't work for me. It's just, these are the beginning point where you've got the doors open. Now you need to be able to spend some time just alone with the techniques in a space where you feel comfortable, where you're warm enough, where you're not too hungry, not too full, where you're not worrying about the phone ringing, where you're not worrying about somebody getting mad at you because you're in there doing technique and they think you should be someplace else, this kind of stuff. So you got to create a space. You got to create a space in your life for your sati space. And that space is a space-time space where you say, okay, I'm going to put this time of, this is me time, me and source time. And I'm just going to not allow any distractions, and I'm going to make myself comfortable and experience this and learn to run with these. They will meet you at some point. When you can get to a certain level in your consciousness with these projections, and you ask for one of the Crystal Lake Council to meet you, they will. And they will actually take you off the tape at that point and show you things and take you to other places and help you learn things that are very personal and particular to you. That's how we learn. That's how, that was part of our process early on, and we didn't even have these levels of activations. So these are even much more powerful than what we had to work with. It was before we had no Haric seal or anything that they had to, get me where I could get in and out of body and hopefully not get flattened in the process. You're much safer than people who did it before these techniques were available, and you can begin this process. You can make contact with the Crystal Lake Council, with the Hathor Council, with Iani Council, with the Adonai Councils, and many other smaller councils that are connected to them in many of the other domains. The Crystal Lake will be the safest ones because they go right to the core, right, they're the first step out from God's source, and we all have a part of ourselves there, so they're the best ones to aim for, and from there you can come backward and interact with whatever councils that the Crystal Lake guides you to, but I'd be careful, with saying, oh, gee, I'm going to go find out who my Edon family is. Just make sure your line's not being intercepted and somebody's taking you, halfway down a black hole to try to make you feel connected, So go to the Crystal Lake core, find your core self level first, and then you can start your journey. But they will take you off the tapes at some point if you actually, sincerely work with these, and you will have experiences. I've had experiences with them where the pillar, where first, the pillar actually manifests. You see a pillar manifest in your room, and then slowly it fills out to be a person. And they kind of oscillate. They're persons. This is the beginning of how contact actually takes place. Before we had workshops about preparing for contact. These are workshops from this point on about engaging contact. All right, there's a difference. So anyway, to the graphs. I wanted to put these little bits up. These are a mess. I have not had time to do any of the typesetting on these graphs. We could hardly get the graphs down at this point. The data's coming so fast. These we've showed a couple of times. We also showed them in the Tenerife workshop. These are simply showing the stages of what's called the starborn cycle, the living light cycle. We've talked about, before you get to this point here, which I'll talk about in a second, you have Partakai. You have the first thought in the mind of God's source. And it goes through a whole set of things that happen where thought becomes the first Partakai. And there's a whole transmission that was given in Tenerife about that part. And then you have what happens when Partakai 1 and Partakai 2, which are the first intended creations of source, how that sets all of the rest in motion. It's through the phasing of the Partakai that all of these other structures that we've seen are created. So everything is created first from its first Partakai. The creation itself was created from the first cosmic Partakai, and each one of you are created from a first Partakai unit. That is the first expression from the mind of God's source into a manifest creation field. Now, from the first Partakai and second Partakai phasing, and when I talk about Partakai phasing, it's when Partakai 1 is a dormant unit that holds a quantum of energy. We won't get into right now the fact that it holds specific ones, and we won't get into encryption that tells you whether you're going to end up with a negative or positive charge on it electrically later. But a part it is the smallest unit, but it also has within it intrinsic parts that form a lattice of energy holding points, standing waves, that are called ers and ohms, and they have specific quantified amounts of stored energy consciousness that has electrical potential. So they are stored units of dormant electrical potential that, when interacting with other particuli, will create release of and replication of that stored electrical potential. So when we talk about Source creating, Source has created, but through a framework that is very, very scientific. But science as we know it here is very, very tiny, because it doesn't even realize that all science itself came out of true spirit and the true spirit of consciousness. Science doesn't yet realize that the first form of energy is consciousness. It is a form of energy unto itself, and that is the raw substance out of which everything else manifests in all other states of matter. So when we have Particle 1, Particle 2 births through the center of Particle 1, through the center creation point. Consider the particle as a sphere of energy, and through that sphere comes another burst of energy that becomes another sphere. But in the process of it coming through, of the second particle coming through the center of the first one splits. And it splits into two, yet it's still united by something called the flame, a little bit of raw source energy that comes out the center creation point that actually keeps enough magnetic attraction happening where the two parts of the first particle that split don't go flying off from each other. They actually stay and in a formation like this, hooked to the second particle, and at the center of that creation point would be the flame. The sparks come together, the pieces of the first particle come back together, and they make sparks, and then they pull in and come back through the second particle in what's called a backflow spark, a return of energy to Source. And then because of the return of energy to Source, Source returns quantum of energy back. It's the backflow and the backflow return that make the difference between a Christic, living, eternal living system and a finite, not eternal living system that can be either unchristic or anti-Christic, which is Metatronic. All right. So when we're talking about these shapes here, this is what happens after we have the first phasing of the first particle. We end up with first phasing of the first particle creates a triad. All right. The triad would be considered the particle with its split. All right. Particle 1 splits as particle 2 came out. First you'd have particle 1, right? And then particle 2 starts birthing through the center, splits particle 1, and particle 2 takes over the spot. That was where particle 1 was, and at the center there would be the flame. So you have this configuration. You can turn it this way and look at it this way, or whatever. But you would have the sparks at these 90 degree angles to each other. Is that 90 degrees? Yes. I'm tired. I get my 45s and 90s confused when I'm tired. So from this, you end up with these two coming together, forming the first backflow spark, and the backflow spark goes into Source, comes back out, and when it comes back out, the backflow spark splits particle 2. So you have this constant splitting and reassembling, and sparking thing that happens. With the first phase of the particle creates backflow spark 1. The second phase of the particle, which is the etheric phase, it's an up phase. So you get atomic phases, or when the particle 1 splits down. And if you, I don't have that up here, but if you saw it like this, we have the particle this way. That is, particle 2 is here, particle 1 is split down. It's called a down phase. The two pieces of particle 1 come together, create a spark here, and it goes back in up here. It creates a down backflow return spark, and that backflow return spark causes particle 2 to split up phase. This makes the difference between what becomes the atomic currents and the etheric currents that form from the up phase. This also goes right down to how quarks are formed. Science here tells us we have up quarks and down quarks and charmed quarks and quarks with all sorts of different characteristics. This has to do with what type of currents they originally formed from in the phasing of the first particle. Now after you get the first particle set phases, you have phase 1 is the particle 1 splitting. Particle 1 splits create atomic sparks. Particle 2 splits create etheric sparks. So you have the down split. The first down split creates particle 1 spark. That would actually, the backflow would actually return here. So you'd have the first, before you get to a tarn from this, you'd have this, sparks 1, makes 1 here, then goes back in. Backflow return comes out here, splits particle 2. Partakai 2, the second spark, the second phase of the triad, would create a backflow spark up here, and Partakai 1 splits again, would create another down phase spark, atmic spark here, but it bumps into this one, the one that's already there, and it shoots that one over this way and this one over this way. And this is where you get the spark configuration that forms the Taran. That's where your Taran light seed forms. So when you get to the fourth phase, which is an etheric up phase, a whole bunch of things happen that are complicated, but they create the fourth Partakai spark, which becomes a Partaki. It has different characteristics because it interacted with the other three, and that creates that dynamic thing that the first chemical reactions of light, which are, I forget how they have that broken down, but it's the Ka, Ma, Eka, El, or whatever, signatures of, tonal signatures that the word chemical actually comes from. But this is the living light seed. It is the beginning of what becomes life, eternal living life that can perpetually regenerate itself. So the Taran forms from the phasing of the first Partakai. The first Partakai and the second Partakai, which will always be in like a split, one of them split configuration, are considered the triad. The triad generates the sparks that create the Taran. The Taran, when it goes through its cycle that we've just been moving through here, of natural key creation, and keys become tachyons, and tachyons become tachyon fields, and it all inhales, replicates, and comes back out, plus a double of itself. All right? The first Partakai, the Taran, will go through its cycle, do its inhale, replicate, it would come back out, and then a double of itself would come back out. Here you had 3 main units, plus a Partaki center. This one, you actually have 6 main units. There's 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6. There's 2 that are actually merged at the center, and in the center of that, you'd have that. So these begin the process of what's called the starborn living light cycle, where from the Taran, the cycle finishes, it replicates, comes back out, it forms what's called the dyad, which is the one with, that has 6 Partakai units. Now these have numbers with them. The number of the Partakai, the Taran, is considered the 3, and that's kind of like the constant, because this one always comes back out with all of the other cyclings. The dyad has it has 3 Partakai and 3. These are Partakai, by the way. These sparks, they're backflow return sparks, are Partakai sparks. So this is where you're getting replication of Partakai. The original Partakai units have actually replicated now, and here you have 3 plus a Partaki, which is a different animal that's created from the other 3. All right. This one you end up with. So you have 3 Partakai sparks. This one you have 3 positive, 3 etheric and 3 atmic Partakai sparks. You get 3 and 3 plus the 3 in the center. The 3 in the center is the Taran in the center, the 3 in the center. Okay, this one goes through its cycle of key generation, tachyon cycle and all that, and it pulls back in, replicates, and comes back out again, along with this again, and this again, and that one becomes what's called the 636, which is the myad. It's called the living lotus seed. It's at this level that the distortions of the Metatronic system have affected all creation in this particular Veka system, this particular universal system, where it has mutated the stages between here and here, and you end up with instead of having the 3, the natural Taran functioning at the center, you end up with another 6 at the center, where you get the 666, because it splits the dyad into a set of outer 6, and it forms an unnatural seed that's known as the seed of Metatron, I believe, in the center, and that's where you get the 666 sign of the beast stuff. So the natural one is the 636, where you have it's actually, wait a minute, how did these, I forget how, I'm trying to remember how he taught these. This is actually, has 12 Partakai, 6 on one side, 6 on the other. We're talking about sizes where we get the difference between the Le'atori and the Le'adore charge flames, okay? It's about polarity, about one having primarily positive and one having primarily negative, even though there's negatives and positives within both sides. So here we've got the 333. This one we have the 636, where we've got 12 Partakai altogether. We've got 6 positive and 6 negative Partakai that form, so that's 12 Partakai, and it forms the 636 seed atom, myad, living lotus seed. This is the next stage in the starborn cycle. The reason I'm bringing the starborn cycle up right now is because we have just gone through and are in the process of moving through the phase cycle of the Taran. Once the Taran goes through this tachyon cycle, it will trigger it in every level. So it starts at the Taran, and if you can have these smaller tachyon cycles happen, say with this level, it'll pull into that level and then come back out again. But it's not a full replication set, it's just a recharge set of quantum building. But when you have the original Taran actually pull in, and it does its rebirth cycle, it implies all the others will pull in. That implies at the end of all the others pulling in, they all will pull in a big starfire point, and then the whole thing will rebirth back out. The damage to this universal Vecca system has been so severe that the starfire system has been triggered into activation. Recreation is literally being a rebirth of the creation, is literally being reborn, and we're a part of it. And it's like you can't exactly say, well, stop the universe, I'm going to get off, I don't want to be here, because it's going to happen whether you believe it or not, whether you want to be a part of it or not. And it always helps to know, and to know what to do to get in the place that you'd most like to be in the event where you have large universal as well as galactic and planetary issues that are directly affecting what you can do with your free will, because that's what's happening on this planet in the solar system. So anyway, we have the Taran, and that expands out to become the Dyad, and that expands out to become the Maiad, the 636, which is the Crystalla star seed. So we have the star spark would be the Taran, the star light would be the Dyad, the star seed would be the Maiad. Next one, please. What was the 636 becomes the 12312, right, which means 24 partakai. That's called the monad, or the monos, all right? This goes through its phase cycles. Now, a phase cycle, remember what three balls did all by their lonesome, right? That's what we were reading about in those papers. That was just this phase cycle of the Taran. Each one of these levels, with all of its sets of three, has a phase cycle, and they phase cycle all together, so they're building more and more and more, key levels. But the core keys are the keys that are formed by the Taran, and they will bring together all of the other keys in the rest of all of the levels of the light body. That's why we work with those first. And so here we have that word, the mysterious word, the monad. So it is this level where the 636 seed of living light becomes the 12-3-12, and 12 Ettore and 12 Adore. Okay, and they're basically Taran configurations. There's 4 sets of 3 and 4 sets of 3 that you don't see in this diagram. But this one does its phase cycle, pulls in, comes back out, and the 12-3-12 becomes basically, you could say 24-3-24, but it's actually 4 times 12 equals 48. So you got 48 partakai happening at this point. This is the Mata-Ur, which is called the star bloom. It is the Amareya hub cell that we've talked about that has the 48 spheres or partakai of the Amareya hub cell. And this is what is the cell of the inner domain. So these things would have been, before this, are part of what would be considered the core domains. I think it's from here outward we go into what are called the inner domains and the inner hub domains. There are still 2 levels of domains that come out of these phasing. We have the 48. The 48, as you're building charge here, as these progressively build, it goes from being a times 2 replication to a times 3 replication. And you get, and this is, by the way, each one of these is considered a cycle. I won't go into the cycles right now because we have the charts to show how they move and what happens in each of them, but we don't need to do that right now. Just to know that this would have been cycle 4, so you take it back. You have, I think the Taran is cycle 0, and then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, cycle 5. And then by cycle 6, you've got a times 3 replication. So you have 48 times 3 equal 144 partakai. This is considered the starburst unit. This is also considered the divine blueprint. This is where we get the 144 primary partakai, or primary keys to the divine blueprint. That's called the Maharata. Okay? And that would be, this would be 12. It's still this configuration. They keep in what's called the Ruche configuration. But it would be, instead of just 12 singular partakai, you have, each one of these has 12 in it. So you have 12 times 12, and that's where you get the 144. Can we lift that up so I see the bottom, honey, please? Thank you. And down here, it continues, you have the star-fire cycle, which is cycle 7, which is really an uncycle. It's called there's different names for it that all end with Elan and Aro. We have the Hitharo and Hethalon cycle, and that is actually a cycle of reaching electrical and magnetic peaks where the quantums build to their peak potentials, and then a set of things happen during those. So in this, what would be considered the 7th cycle, the star-fire cycle, you have the 144 went from being a times 3, 48 times 3 to 144, goes times 12. So you got 144 times 12. It creates the Edon and the 1728 keys of the Edon. And that's what we're activating now. That's called the Akashara or Akashara Ta'or. These are all Ta'ors because they are dealing with those Ta light units that form Urs or Ors, right? So you got Ta'ors, Ta'ors. And you can just think of them as the towers of creation. You also can look at the, what is it? I think it's a neutrino particle, subatomic particle thing. That is a TAO, I think. Is that how they spell it here? And they pronounce it Tao, I think? Yeah. But this is all connected to those two. So are things like muons, what they call muons down here, because when you take the flame, now the flame is that little thing that I talked about in the first set of particles that has a quantum of 3 1/3. By the way, we're finding out what part's the 3, what part's the 3rd. It's getting that detailed at this point, yeah. But it's called the divine variable constant, because sometimes it's plus 3 1/3, sometimes it's minus 3 1/3, depending on whether the flame is moving outward or moving inward to God's source. And that will it determines actually the quantum flows and how the quantums build within the whole light body structure, which will determine whether a thing is capable of continuing self-phasing or whether it will burn out, whether it is eternal and perpetual motion or whether it is not. And that is another difference between the ascension program that we teach and the ascension programs that have been taught since Atlantis on this planet. They are teaching you how to do Metatronic ascension, where yes, you can ascend as long as you can suck energy off something else because you can't generate it in your own light cells anymore. And this is the natural structure where you get the 144, 48 times 3 is 144, 144 times 12 is 1728 particuli, right? Is the Edon. Then there's a leap cycle that brings you back to what's called 0 point. And in that cycle, you get 1728 times 12, which is 20,736. And this forms what's called the Adon. And that is connected to what is called the Rachalet Tower. And that actually has to do with the hub bodies that when we activate full Rachalet, we would actually go from 1728 Edon key activations into this level. And there is, I believe, 2 levels out from there because it expands out to a certain point. And I think that's here. Then it starts going back in again and concentrating keys. So there's an outfold and an infold of creation, and it's a constant, perpetual process. So I just wanted to connect what we're doing with the keys here and with tachyon cycles with the starborn cycle, because each level of creation that we're seeing here, each part of the light body structure, has its own tachyon cycle like that. And we just realized that we just finished the first one, which will imply the rest of them and the rest of our light body structures and the rest of the universal light body structure will also complete their tachyon cycles and have a starfire at the end. All right, next one, please. I love this one. We can thank Az for this one. This is the 1728, okay, where you got 12. Yeah, and you can't see all of it because some of them, the colors actually drop out when you try to put it on Mylar because they're all color-coded as far as what frequencies. Because in a Rouchet configuration, there's specific colors for like D1, red, D2, yellow, etc. They all apply to one Rouchet, and they all apply to every one of these light body structures. And this one is, again, a Rouchet configuration that you can hardly see, right? But it's there. And it has a set of 12 that inside of them has a set of 144, all right? So this is where you have, and again, the 144 that look kind of like this, each of the 12 had a set of 12, right? So this is how they're built. This is the 1728 keys, the image of the 1728 keys, 1728 first particuli of the Edon, which is called the middle creation level. Now, we're in the outer creation levels that expand outward from this. And I won't go into that because this has to do with the Pillar of Power workshops that we've had where it outfolds and infolds and things. And that will take us to like tomorrow afternoon to get through that. But that information is there. This at least will show you the configuration of keys that we're activating within our systems, within our light body. You can picture yourself that when we get into the DNA, we've talked about the 1728, I believe they're called vector codes in the DNA, and each one of them corresponds with a space-time coordinate, which corresponds with an incarnate. This is why we say you have 1728 cells. If you exist here, it implies you have 1727 others of you running around somewhere in the density systems, because you come in through this configuration. You start out as a first particle, and that is how anything comes into manifestation. It follows the same process from source that the macrocosm of creation did. So this would also be your kind of like family tree portrait, that each one of these would be one of you. And at times, every large set of, let's just call them particle balls here, they phase together, where these two pull together, and they spark, and then they pull into this one, and they spark, and of course that set of three and that set of three do it, and they all pull in together and pull into the center. And it's also how the incarnates, come together. And these have to do with time cycles, when these things, when these expansions and contractions occur, and when these reality fields cross through each other. So these are the keys to creation, understanding these things. There's a lot of pieces to understanding this, but I wanted you to understand some of this, and I wanted to just see, finally, because I couldn't even draw it. I tried to draw it. I mean, I got as far as being able to do a sloppy version of the 144, and then as clean that one up. That one came out all right, but then I tried to do the 1728 out of like reduced amount of photocopier, and the photocopier distorts the heck out of stuff, where circles become orbs, and it's just hopeless. So he finally figured out how to do it on CAD. I'm so pleased. It was just really beautiful. That was not easy. I wouldn't even want to attempt that. I'm going to make a nice T-shirt, actually. Yeah, I think we could have some fun, like doing a T-shirt design around that. I think once we get some color put in here, like the. Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah, so you can see the white and the gray ones. Because right now, like there are white and gray balls that have to do with the D12 and the 11 frequencies. You can't even see them on here. But if you want, we could do posters and like T-shirts or something with it, with like say a celestial stars background where you could see all of them, and probably some kind of interesting little something of words or something on it. But it's going to be the basis of some kind of T-shirt or poster or something, because it's also a code, of course. There are things to do with this they haven't showed us yet that staring at it will work, I think, that you can project through it, and it's actually a map. So there are points where we will be taught in Rachelet training, once we learn how to like get our eyes open and get our engine started, we'll be taught how to use these maps in order to project to specific time bands within the time cycles that we're connected to. So they're actually they're time traveler's guides. There was a book we were going to do once upon a time, but then the Ascension Cycle kind of came in and put that as a back thing. It was called Time Traveler's Guide to Symbols and Their Uses. His symbols are keying, their frequency keying devices in light and sound that connect to very specific points within space-time. So there's a whole bunch of things we need to learn, but I want you to see the 1728. We got that far. I won't even attempt to think about the 20,736. Oh, we did put a time cycle in there, didn't I? All right, I'm not going to go heavily into this, or we'll be here again until tomorrow. But what I do want to show on this one is there is a process of expansion that occurs as far as how the light seeds grow out. When I talked about the cycles that, from the taran to the dyad to the myad to the monad, all of those things, each one of those cycles is actually what's called a 6 cycle. And it's funny because if you count, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 lines there. Why is that a 6 cycle, right? That was my first question when these diagrams came through. It's called the cycle of the octaves, but it is considered a 6 cycle. The 0 point line is here, and you go from here to here. This would be axis 1, right? Then axis 2, axis 3, axis 4, axis 5, axis 6. 6 are done. Here's where you hit 7. This is the Hetero-Hethalon cycle, where there's an expansion of energy that's actually occurring within all of those cycles. When you hit the 7, finish the 6th cycle, that is where it starts to amplify it, but go back inward to the center, and then starts a counter spiral. This becomes what are called the crystal spiral of living light creation. It's the spirals of expansion and contraction of energy that are spark currents that are being sent out by the core, creation particle units and the core structures. It's the expansion of the first light cells. Say it's the Tarn. I haven't had time to put these together yet, but if we look down in here in this little tiny Cathara grid, because see, these are all actually embedded Cathara grid structures. See this? Every one of these are embedded Cathara grids. This was formed, and they showed how to actually form the living light creation spiral, how it's actually formed, by saying, all right, if you take one Cathara grid, take the 9 point on that Cathara grid, let that be the 12 point on the next one in. Okay? That way. Then take the 9 point on that one and let that be the 12 point on the next one in. This is how you get the shapes. I'm not great with math. In fact, I don't like math much at all. So they didn't try to give me formula or anything. They showed me how the proportions are distributed. But these literally govern the proportions of expansion and contraction of energy within the universal structures. So if we get down to the first one, on that first cycle, it's called the 0 point line. The first expansion would be this little tiny Cathara grid. There's a little tiny one that's actually running on this axis, where it's 12 is on this axis here. And it's right down in there. And that would be the 0 point where the phasing and the spark generation and tachyon creation first starts. And that would probably be, I do believe, the size of the Taran when we got into, if I could plot each one of the sizes of those stages of the creation, they would each be proportionate to these circles here. I just haven't had time to put all those graphs together yet and shrink them down to the right size and things. So you'd have the 0 point cycle, then you'd have the cycle 1 axis would be this axis, and that would be the axis that the Taran was phasing on in that cycle, and then the next expansion would be on this axis, and the next one would be on this, and each one would represent an expansion of the energies being generated and put out by the, from the pulsing of the Taran and the pulsing of the thing the Taran created, which is the dyad, and the pulsing of the thing the dyad created, which is the myad. So these actually create the proportion relationships between the spirals of creation and between the spheres within spheres that, like the 1728, with all of those get plotted on here. And they show you the structure of the light body, what it's supposed to look like. You won't find these in Metatronic books because they make sure that you don't get at that Taran in its normal state, because the Taran actually has the power to override any messes you made in the rest of the light bodies coming outward. And that's what we're in the middle of, is freeing the Taran and clearing it of a harness that was put on it that didn't belong there, so we can restart and clear the entire system, because that's the only way it's not going to fall a black hole. That's the only way anybody's going to get out, let's say, of the black hole fall that's occurring in our galaxy. Now, science here will even tell you that there is a black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy. They're also finding other ones recently that you see it floating around the internet and stuff. So this isn't science fiction. Science is already, backing some of this up. But they're not going this far. Right. So I just wanted to say a 6 cycle actually has 8 axes. Up to 6 are spark generation cycles. Then you have the tachyon cycles that take place during the Hetero-Hethalon and the reset cycles. So this between 6 axis and 7 axis is, I do believe, where your tachyon cycle would happen, where the keys activate and gets the thing ready to go to pulse inward. And then this cycle is probably, I'm just learning this part of it myself, this from 7 to the 8th or back to 0, which would be the 0 point line, is the point where the tachyon field activates and everything pulls back in and then replicates back out to the next level of expansion. So these diagrams just show you the beginning of understanding something we need to understand threshold. Because if anything, before we leave tonight, I want you to understand a little bit about what I'm talking about the threshold grid that belongs to the Metatronic side. Actually, it belongs to the Thetans, who have now plugged it in to the Metatronic side so they could take over the Metatronic beast. And if we understand this basic proportion of the proportions of how the Cathara grids grow from each other, how creation, the amount of quantum, this is about how much quantum is generated in each cycle, right, that allows for a replication of what size to occur for the next time. And there's specific numbers, and there are specific numbers of what's called the Christ code, which has to do with the karayasata, right? These are sound tones. Has the stories of Christ and things. This is not just about Christians. This is about everybody. All right. There was an original set of teachings that belonged. We have Allah there. We have Buddhist sparks there. They're all part of it. So this is the one spiritual teaching that all of the others came out of. And we talk about Christ a lot, but I want it to be clear, especially to people that are new, that we're not just saying this is just for Christians, that you have to be a Christian to believe in any of this, or that this is the structure that's reserved for Christians because they're somehow elite compared to other people, because it's none of those things. All right, these are just sound tones of the vibrational encryptions. That's where we get the sounds that come together to form the words, and that's how they are used in our teachings. Now, anyway, this shows you the proportions. Down here, it gives you just another list of we went from the triad, you could consider it stardust, then we went to the taran, the star spark on the first cycle, went to starlight, which was the dyad, we went to the star seed, which is the myad, the star bud, which is the monad, the star bloom, which was the Amaria hub cell, the star burst, which is the 144 divine blueprint, right? These are the cycles, and therefore the axes on which the Taran is phasing, in which the tachyon cycles are taking place. Okay, so each of these would have an axis that corresponds with the axis of expansion and contraction up there. So this is just to show you where keys and all that have to do with literally the structure of the light body itself. Next one, please. Okay, now we'll just look at the Taran just for a second. All right, the diamond door in the creation point crystal is located at the center of the Pardaki sphere. This would be that center sphere that is the Pardaki, which is the product of the fourth backflow return spark from the fourth phase of the triad. Okay? So this is the Pardaki where all that action is taking place. This is the chemical generator cell, the Kama L, however they say that, but it's about the different sound frequencies. When we get into this level of core creation, there's a whole set of transmissions on what's called the dance of the ethers, the Eta-urs. And these are the actual core units of different gelesic states, they call them gelesic states, that are the holders and carriers of stored electrical charge potential that are picked up directly from source. And when we get into the dance of the ethers is when we start to understand a lot of things about what are happening in the core. It was hard enough to track the Partakai sparks themselves. Who's doing what? Who's on first? Who? It's like trying to watch a game. Yeah, 6 baseball games at once. Who's on first? Who's on? Where are the bases? Right. Well, once we've made some progress in Tenerife of tracking what are called the tiles that show how the starborn cycle of Taran to dyad to myad, all that forms. But we haven't even touched yet the ethers, what we call in simple terms the ethers. They're actually the Eta-urs, right? But they form what are called ethers, vapors, gas vapors, right? That start the process of interacting gas vapors that actually create the substance from which matter units eventually emerge through the formation of the different stages of the starborn light units. So there would be Eta-urs in here. When we talk about the diamond door, the Nada-ur, it is an Eta-ur. It is a type of Eta-ur. There are different sound frequencies carried within different of the ethors or etors, and that's where they get different names. So the diamond door, we've got the Nada-ur of the Adama flame. When you put the Adama flame, which is around the diamond door, and the Nada-ur together, it ended up with the diamond door. That is simple. But it's also a crystal. It's compressed. It becomes what is called a piezoelectric crystal at the center. And it's actually, you could say it's frozen light. But it's not light, because these things are actually happening before light itself fully happens. We're still at the seed of light before we get the starlight that comes from it, which would be the dyad. So there's a lot more teachings that go into this that really crack the codes, actually, of the elemental kingdoms and the formation of elements and those kind of things. And that has to do with the Eta-urs and basically how many joules, or joules, of stored electrical potential are carried within the spark currents that come out through the formation of the tarn. And remember, the tarn creates the Kilana sparks. The Kilana sparks form keys. All of those things. All of those things have Ja'uel count, which means they have stored electrical potential within them, quantum potential. So all of this is connected to all of the things that they teach you about in physics in school. But there's a lot of steps and a lot of transmissions in between, even still, but we've gotten pretty far. So anyway, this is just the tarn, a close-up look at the tarn in its open phase, in its relaxed phase. The tarn actually creates the Kilana sparks by pulling in toward, right in here you'd have the diamond door, you'd have the Adama flame, and you have the flame inside of the diamond door. It's called the 3 1/3 variable constant, which is a little flame that keeps the creation point, the original creation point, open, and it sometimes flips in towards source and creates a vacuum and pulls things inward, and sometimes pops outward when backflows, return sparks are coming out, and sends energy outward. That flame actually ends up determining the amount of joule content that each Partakai unit will hold. So it's a very sophisticated system of how to combine electrical energies in the right way, that the perfect balances will be achieved, where it can be a perpetual cycling system that is self-sustaining, as opposed to something that where if that diamond door closed and the flame went out, the connection, the direct opening to the source consciousness field is no longer there. So whatever quantum is stuck on the manifest side will eventually burn itself out by cycling, and it can't regenerate. That's the difference, again, between a Christic and a not Christic system. All right, next one, please. This is just the beginning of, and the proportions aren't perfect on this either yet. I have to put a Cathara grid up and see exactly where each level is, but there's a summary of the 15 crystalline gelesic radiation. So their radiation vapor gel are these states that are inside of the Partakai, right? The Partakai unit. And that's where all of the things that we've been moving through with tachyons and all, that's where tachyons are generated. So literally inside of the Partakai. Now, there are 15 gelesic radiation states in the Taran light seed, and there are 9 inside of the Partakai. The 9 inside of the Partakai are called the Iyuka, or the yoke of eternal life. The entire system of the Partakai and its life seed form what is called the Ova or the ovum of life, the egg of life. And this is literally taking place within one Taran, within one Taran light seed, which is the 3 with the 1 in the center and the 1 around it. This is the Partakai only. All right, that one center cell that is the generator cell, which generates the keys and the tachyons and all of that feeds the rest of the expansion cycles. So these are the different names of the interior gelesic states. The ka, the ma, the ta, these words, these sounds, are the audible translation of the vibrational signature that is carried by the encryption. The encryption is the stored little bits of different types of gelesic or gel consciousness that hold a specific set of vibrations. Everything has an encryption. It has a joule count. It has inside of that joule count very specific vibrational patterns that form your creation imprint or your encryption. And each of these sounds has to do with the core encryption or vibrational pattern when you translate it into audible sound that comes from these particular states that are different layers within the Partakai field. So we got the ka, the ma, the ta, the jada, the ida, the ta'o, the jafa, and this is where we get the word guf from, the adama. That's where the whole story of Adam and Eve came from. There's actually the really bad version of the Dance of the Ether story that has to do with the core flame and what happens in there. And then you have the nadaor. When you put the adama and the nadaor together, you get the diamond door. And it's really called the diamond door because it is the nadaor, which would be here. Now you don't necessarily have to label them this way. When I finish this diagram, I'll probably label them from one going out this way. But for now, and because they were listed this way in the text originally, I have them with the most outer one, which is here. That would be the Ka field that we've talked about. being on the outside, being number 1. That would probably end up number 9, so you could keep going outward to get the rest, till you get to 15. The ones that are outside of the Pardaki, but inside of the Tarn light unit. So these are where these gel states are created by the dance of the ethers, the interaction of these little tiny encrypted ether units that create different types of vibrational signatures and electromagnetic polarity interactions. And they are what fuel and what allow for the replication factor in Pardaki phasing. So we have all of these. There's we get the Jada and the Ida. All right, we got 4 and 5, the Jada and the Ida. Ectogelesic is the Jada field of cool, dry, semi-liquid vapor gas gel. The Jada middle surface. It's also called the Garden of Eden. You know, these words that are in our stories came from, in Atlantis some of this stuff was known. So there are translations now that, like English language has a lot. That's why they use English, because there's a lot of similarity between some of the Atlantean languages that were used to actually translate this. So English carries a lot of the signatures that will allow a clearer translation here in audible sound of the different parts of things. We need to know how to make those sounds in order to make those things activate within the body pattern. There are other languages too. All languages have a piece of the sacred within them, and they all create reactions in your shields and in your biofields. But anyway, so when we talk about the word Christ, it comes from Ka. It comes from another one that's not on one of these states because it's part of something else that happens later, which is called the Ra energy. Ka, Ra, Ya is another one. Ya, Sa is another one. Ta, all right, Ha, La, you know, all of those. So when we get words like Christ, Christalla, they're all coming from acknowledging the combination of energies that are combined in the encryption of that particular thing. That's why we have names too. And it's kind of, you feel better when your name actually seems to fit your encryption. And do you ever have a name, like, I don't know, I was given a name that it's not a bad name, I just don't resonate with it. It doesn't feel like me at all. And that's why we always say you have the right to choose your name. And your parents shouldn't be. Well, some would be, but that depends on the belief system they've been taught. But there's no reason why a parent should think they have the right to verbally harness the identity of a child that they brought here. I mean, fine, you can be called like Joe or Sam until you turn like 12, and by the time you're 12, you may not know what it is yet. But say by the time you're 20, you definitely know what you want it to be. You have a right to pick your name, a name that feels right to you. And it's because names come right back down to tonal vibrational signatures that either resonate or don't with certain parts of your fields. If you happen to be born into a family where, let's say, you ended up with Dragon Anunnaki parents, not by accident, but because you needed to pick up codes and you made deals with them too, and they're trying to harness you into a certain name band, it will keep those frequencies of that name band that correspond to that part of the gene code and your shields alive, instead of allowing more of the freedom of your own frequencies to come through. So there is a significance in a name. It is important. And sometimes you kind of float around saying, I don't know what to call myself. Just call myself it. You know what I mean? And you also find that as you grow, your name will change. As you bring more of your higher self in, more of your encryption comes in. This is why, you know, we went from Anea Kananda, then we went up to, we had like 6 different changes in between before we got to Ashana. And actually it's Aisha now. Right, it's actually E-Aisha now, but we'll just leave it at Aisha, right? It's the integration of the different levels of self from the different domains of consciousness. So names are not meant to limit, but they do. And if we can realize that there is a freedom in the names, we can start to understand that words are important. And what we call ourselves, even in our own mind, matters. And you can re-choose yourself. You can rename yourself. You can be who you choose to be, because that was your free will right given by Source. And a lot of us don't feel we have that freedom. I mean, it's a pain in the bum here to do it, because you have to go to court and get your name changed. Why? Well, because I want to. That's not a good enough reason. Well, go write a book or something, so maybe you have an excuse of why you can change your name. Come on already. And it's like, so my passport says my birth name, all right? But you know what? I'm still me. I'm not going to let that get me. So you might want to think about that. Be who you want to be, not just in a name. You have a right to decide who you want to be, what you want to do, and you do have the freedom to begin creating it. We've opened the manifestation platform now. We can seed ideas, and as long as they're in co-resonant harmony with the rest of our identity and our own natural evolutionary path, it would be a positive path, we will be able to have the co-creative assistance of Source working with us to create what we desire. We can create anything on that inner shield. Remember when we opened up the sati seta space, and that shield was extending here? You can extend the ball a little bit bigger out around your head, and just create. Send yourself in a little you, and you can change what it is. If you're, you can change just about anything. You can manifest from that space inside of the first Partikai. We're going to be learning manifestation techniques through the Taran, which are the most powerful, because anything that's in the Taran gets replicated out in all the other levels of the light body, which means it will manifest at some point. And the idea is to get it to the point where you want it to manifest, or like not 600 years from now. Yes, I did manifest that car. Yeah, I got a Ford popped up. Yeah, sitting on somebody's lawn 3,500 years in the future. Right? Whoops. Yeah, so anyway.